Several days ago, we posted a video about Jedi Masters that slaughtered their own Padawans in cold blood, all due to a single vision they received within the Force. But in this holocron, we are continuing the storyline by informing you of the cruel man, the cruel Sith Jedi hybrid, or at least attempted hybrid, named Haazen. As a quick recap, there existed a fringe group within the Jedi Order who called themselves the Covenant. They were a team of 5 Jedi, 4 of who were talented seers, who could use the Force to see the future. They then merged their power to look into the future collectively, and one of them, a Jedi Guardian, acted as an enforcer for the group. They were put together with the idea that they would look into the future and prevent the return of the Sith, a prophecy which had been foretold long ago, not wanting another situation like Exar Kun, where a Jedi would ultimately become a Sith, and usher in great pain and destruction for the Jedi. The Covenant were absolutely terrified of the Sith, and hated them more than any Jedi organization in history. That is why this vision was so confusing, and led them to incriminate their own Padawans as the returned Sith. Worried that the new Sith menace would arise from this group, they murdered them all, save for one who survived, a Jedi learner with a very strained connection to the Force named Zane Carrick. Terrified by what his masters had done, Zane fled Terrace with the help of a con artist, helping him to evade the Jedi who pinned the blame on the Padawan deaths on this young fugitive. Zane, now a fugitive from the Republic and the Jedi, goes on a quest to prove his innocence, even if that means picking off each member of the Covenant one by one unless they confess their crimes to the High Council. But little did any of them know the true darkness that lurked behind the scenes, and today, we are going to finish by talking about the Sith, Haazen. He was named Haazen, an old man who served as the steward of the Dre family. The Dreys were a noble family on Coruscant who had a lineage of producing extremely strong Force sensitives. Almost every member of the Dre family was born with the ability to touch the Force and eventually became a Jedi, making a prominent name for themselves as a wealthy, powerful house of Coruscant. Lucian Dre, the Hand of the Covenant, was the son of the Dre matriarch and the heir to the family fortune. Keep in mind that this was all happening roughly 4,000 years before the Clone Wars, so there were many common instances of the Jedi allowing members to marry and have a family. One of these special exceptions was made to the Dre family, who not only became Jedi out of their own family, but also had their family train many Force sensitives, who would one day eventually join the Jedi Order. To put things simply, the Dre were essentially Jedi and Coruscant nobility. This was also in an era where the Jedi would train much older individuals, and the Dreys had a good standing relationship with the Jedi since they supplied them many trainees. Many years before the events of the Padawan murders, during the time of the Great Sith War by Exar Kun, there were 3 individuals who would join the Jedi Order against the Sith: Barriss Dre, his soon-to-be wife Krinda, and his servant, Haazen. The family of Haazen served the Dreys for generations, and Haazen had proved that he had some Force sensitivity with the Force, enough that he hoped that he could become a Jedi. Because of this, Barriss pulled some strings in order to get him accepted into the Order. However, Haazen had a very awkward connection to the Force, and constantly underperformed. Haazen and Barriss were very close friends, as Barriss was a good man who did anything he could in order to protect his friend and to serve those around him. He didn't think of himself as better than anyone because he was nobility, causing him to form a great friendship for someone who was meant to be his simple servant. And although Haazen would act as if he appreciated the friendship, in the shadows, he would pine for everything that Barriss had. One of the things that he desired was his new wife, Krinda. But things for the time being were as normal and peaceful. In fact, all of them were trained by the direct master of Exar Kun, the greatest fighter of the Jedi Order at the time, Vodo Siosk Boss, the very same master who had prevented Exar Kun's fall to the dark side. It was this master who would knight Barriss and Krinda as Jedi. But Haazen was passed over. Enraged and feeling abandoned, Haazen began to make all sorts of assumptions. He accused Barriss of buying his way into the Jedi, buying Krinda, and buying his own knighthood. After the war with Exar Kun was over, Haazen had become completely consumed with envy, and to make things worse, he was too weak to have joined Exar Kun, too weak to become a Jedi, and he was forced to watch Barriss become a literal hero of the war, gaining glory. Haazen found himself conspiring with a fugitive criminal who had once served the Great Sith. The fugitive suggested a plan to lure Barristan and his Jedi entourage into a cave, one where they would then blow set charges and murder them all. Haazen agreed to the plot, and the plan was successful, and Barristan Dre was in fact murdered by his friend. But Haazen had a debt to pay. The fugitive would blow the charges too early, not wanting for him to get out of the way first, and as a result, Haazen was badly injured. He woke up with his flesh melted, and his arms, legs, and right eye were gone. The fugitive that he had conspired with still made good on their deal though, and he had one of the remaining Sith scientists fix Haazen, saving his life. But to put him back together was far more shoddy than even Darth Vader's transformation. Haazen was fitted with prosthetics that were not meant for humans. Instead, the Sith scientist had fitted him with arms, legs, and an eye that were all Sith artifacts. One of these artifacts was a strange object known as the Yoke of Seeing, and according to the Sith scientist, this would now make it as though Haazen was a rock in the middle of the river of the living Force, making it so that the Force flowed around him instead of through him. This would perfectly cloud the Jedi's abilities to sense his own intentions, and he was also told by the scientist that he could gain more of these artifacts and put them inside his body to increase his power, mitigating the problem that he had with his connection to the Force. Haazen saw a grand opportunity. Haazen could truly become powerful. Now completely losing himself to the darkness, he created a new plan. He would take advantage of Lady Crinda's grief and become her personal aide. She had become obsessed with her husband's death and was completely unable to move, believing that he had died to a Sith during the war. Crinda, however, was born with the special talent of being able to see the future like no other Jedi, and she ended up speaking of a prophecy of an era when the Sith would return. Jumping on this opportunity, Haazen worked with her to create a special group of young Force sensitives, ones who were talented in future sight. By combining their abilities, they would be able to perceive exactly when the Sith would return, and they became the Jedi Covenant. Haazen had also been in charge of personally training Crinda's son Lucien, the Jedi Guardian of the Covenant, and would order him to protect them at all costs. Though Lucien could not see the future, he was a great warrior more like his father. Haazen and Crinda raised the Covenant into their creed of being ever watchful for the Sith, and to jump on any opportunity that arose to destroy the Sith before they could return, not realizing the weak and innocent Haazen was by their side the entire time. The Jedi, being unable to sense him, simply deemed him as weak. When the Covenant became teenagers, they would be recruited into the Jedi Order, and as Jedi, they stuck together, believing that if the Sith were going to be returned, it would be from the Jedi Order yet again. While all of this was occurring, Haazen would slowly worm his way into taking control of the Dre family, as well as the Covenant. He had the Covenant go on missions to recover Sith artifacts under the guise of doing experiments on them in order to learn more about the weaknesses of the Sith. He told the Covenant that he was learning how to destroy them. However, he was using all of them to feed his own power. None of them could sense his true intentions because of the Yoke of Seeming, and they trusted him completely, as they couldn't sense anything evil about him. Haazen's plan was to use the Jedi that the Dre family had trained, all of whom were still more loyal to the Dre's than the Jedi, and use them to completely overthrow the Jedi Order, giving it sole control to Haazen. The High Council was distracted with the Mandalorian War and the stuff that the young Revan and Malak were doing across the stars. Crinda's ability in future sight would also weaken as she got older, and she had been completely unable to move on from her husband's passing, and was now totally reliant, leaning into the future sight of the Covenant. She became obsessed with prophecies, and in turn, the Jedi Covenant did as well. Finally, the moment would come, and the Covenant would all share in a singular vision, one that would cause them to murder their Padawans, certain that one of them were to become a Sith. Lucien would report the vision to his mother as well as Haazen. Both of them instructed him to bring all of the Padawans to them on Coruscant for evaluation, but the two of them would use their power to determine whether or not each Padawan had the potential to become a Sith. Only then would their life be ended, with Haazen likely looking for an apprentice. But Lucien wanted to leave nothing to chance. Growing up watching the devastation of war, the devastation of his mother, and what Exar Kun had done, Lucien took it upon himself to murder the Padawan group without consulting Haazen or his mother. When the deed was done, Krinda ended up feeling in the Force and saw it all occur in a vision. She was already in very poor health, and the revelation put her in a rapid decline. Before she was able to interact and contact her son though, she would go into a deep coma, one where Haazen placed her in a stasis casket, unwilling to kill her. Haazen was furious at what Lucian had done, as he secretly wanted to take whoever was to become a Sith and to train a young, powerful apprentice. But that is when he found out that Zane Carrick, a failed Padawan just like himself, had survived the slaughter, and he immediately became interested in finding the boy. But that wasn't really his main concern. He didn't need the Covenant anymore, and his plans were now coming to pass. He had gained enough artifacts and influence both within the Jedi and the Republic to launch a complete uprising. While the Covenant went on a wild goose chase trying to find Zane Carrick, two of them were picked off due to their ambition in trying to catch the Padawan. But one of these masters, named Zamar, had been having misgivings about killing the apprentices from the very beginning, deciding to betray the Covenant and confess his sins to the High Council. By this point, Zane had already asked for help from the Council several times, but unfortunately, they were convinced that Zane was evil. But with Zamar coming forward, they now had more witnesses and evidence. The Council knew though, that if they were going to accuse the Dreys of something this horrific, it would rend the Jedi Order in half. But with Zamar, they knew that they could move forward. In order to atone for what he had done, Jedi Master Zamar agreed to take part in a plan, one to infiltrate the Drey estate and bring the entire Foundation down. They would have Zane pretend to be captured by Zamar and brought directly to Haazen, but then the Jedi Order would launch an attack on the residence, and when this occurred, Haazen revealed his treachery and activated the uprising. All of the Jedi loyal to the Covenant fought against their brothers of the Order, while several went to seize the High Council's storehouse of Sith artifacts. In his moment of triumph, Haazen proclaimed himself Darth Haze, but revealed that he would not take on the moniker of a full Sith Lord, instead proclaiming that he would become something much more, a ruler of Jedi and Sith. Lucian Drey, now seeing Haazen for the true monster he was, attempted to murder him with his lightsaber, but then Haazen revealed his trump card, an artifact known as the Gauntlet of Kresh the Younger, one that gave him the ability to keep anyone from touching him, making him essentially invulnerable. Lucian's attacks meant nothing. Haazen then revealed that he had used his technology to hack into the shared command network of the Republic Navy, one that was orbiting Coruscant. The remote for it had been grafted into the Kresh Gauntlet, and he used it to order the Republic Navy ships to drop bombs on Coruscant, holding the entire city planet hostage. Seeing this, Lucian was now completely lost and consumed, broken. He didn't know the meaning of the prophecy, and his whole world was coming down around him literally, but he was still too concerned with the fact that Zane may become a Sith. Not knowing what else to do, Lucian entered a duel with Zane. However, eventually Krinda is woken from her stasis by none other than one of the con artists that Zane had been working with. Krinda makes it downstairs and collapses in her son's arms, using her final moment to tell him that she saw a vision of him killing the Padawans, expressing deep regret at ever teaching him that their mission was worth risking the lives of children. When she finally died, Zane was able to talk some sense into Lucian, and at last, the two of them plotted to take down Haazen. Master and Padawan resumed their role, only now they faked a duel, one in which Zane would pretend to kill Lucian by having a statue fall on top of him. Then, Zane went and knelt down directly to Darth Haze, who had beckoned him to follow. Haazen declared that Zane would become his first apprentice, and finally lowered his guard, turning off the powers of the Kresh Gauntlet so that he could touch Zane. However, in that moment, Zane grabbed his hand dramatically and pretended as if he was having a vision. But then, he revealed the trick, cleanly hacking off Haazen's arm, lightsaber in hand, taking the gauntlet from him. Lucian then emerged and jumped up, using the Force to throw Zane far out of the way before taking the gauntlet for himself. In this moment, Haazen begins to panic, and as a final act to atone for his mistakes, Lucian Drey uses the remote in the gauntlet to direct the Republic orbital bombardment to target the Drey family estate, sacrificing himself and killing Haazen in the process. And now finally, the conspiracy was over. The aftermath of this battle was bittersweet. Zayn was able to rejoin the Jedi Order and was even knighted as a fully formed Jedi Knight. Haazen's vile plans of becoming a ruler of the Jedi and Sith were over, and as for the Covenant, that was over as well. All of their visions of their deaths ended up coming to fruition, but not in the way they had expected. Each of them properly died according to their visions. Rana Tay died on Terrace during a building explosion after she lost herself to the dark side. Feln died on his home planet after he betrayed the people and destroyed a sacred temple while trying to kill Zayn. Zamar would die as he saw in his vision, destroyed by a Republic fleet during the bombardment of Coruscant, all of which orchestrated by Haazen. Cornelia would die by drinking poison after she realized all was lost, and believed that Lady Krinda was dead, drinking poison out of fear and shame. However, this was not the end for Lucien Dre. At the last moment, he had grabbed the Kresh Gauntlet and managed to protect himself. However, he deemed himself unworthy to be a Jedi, and left Coruscant to atone for his mistakes, allowing the Jedi to believe that he in fact had been killed. Instead, Lucien lived out the rest of his days in exile on a peaceful farming world. And that, my friends, was the story of Haazen, the man who used artifacts to gain all his power and caused Jedi Masters to slay their own Padawans. This was a long video, but if you stayed till the end, I would like to give you a massive thank you. This entire series takes place over the course of 35 issues of the Legends Knights of the Old Republic series, and I would highly recommend checking it out for yourselves, as the action in the comic is great and the humor is even better. It's full of twists and turns at every corner, and if you're a big fan of Revan's era and wanted to see more of what was happening during the Mandalorian Wars, especially with the Jedi and on Coruscant, this is perfect for you. But anyway, my friends, be sure to comment down below your thoughts on this story, the story of Haazen, and the conclusion of the Jedi Covenant. As always, thank you so much for watching the channel and supporting me for all of these years, and may the Force be with you.